Hello and welcome to my channel, The Way What Is Truth. Remember to like, subscribe and comment down below. Now today's video is going to be an interesting one because I'm going to read out 10 crucial archaeological discoveries related to the Bible. Now when it comes to archaeology, I wouldn't even know where to begin because there's so much archaeological evidence that proves the Bible is true. I couldn't even begin to fathom it. In fact, I remember most of these evidences that I'm about to read to you after I've read out the Bible, sorry. I remember most of them, but for the sake of being thorough and not wanting to make any mistakes, I'm going to read it from my mobile phone. But I will say this before I go any further, and it's that if you meet if you talk to any world-renowned archaeologist, I can guarantee it, hand on heart, hope to die, they will say every single time that no archaeological evidences or proofs have ever been uncovered that disprove the Bible. And in fact, everything that's discovered when it comes to the Middle East region and when it comes to anything related to what's written in the Bible, it proves the Bible to be correct. Nothing has been discovered archaeologically that has disproved the Bible, and everything that has been discovered has proved the Bible, or perhaps it's inconclusive, or it's proved the Bible to be correct. I mean, take Sodom and Gomorrah, that area where Sodom and Gomorrah is today. Archaeologists and ordinary folks have been there and they've discovered brimstone everywhere, and it cannot be explained by volcanic activity because there has been no volcanic activity whatsoever in that region, in that area, throughout this whole time. And when Sodom and Gomorrah was around to this day, and this brimstone is like a white chalky substance. If you've got a lighter, you can set fire to it and it smells something chronic. It smells funny, and it will just burn and fizzle up. It's a white chalky substance, brimstone, like it's written in the Bible. God rained down fire and brimstone on Sodom and Gomorrah, and it's there to this day. That's just one proof. Okay, if you don't believe me, you can check it out yourself. Anyway, I'm going to read out of Psalm 13. Just to start off this video. Now, this isn't actually related to archaeology as such, what I'm about to read, but I feel that it relates to me, and I hope and pray that it will relate to anyone who watches this video, so I thought it'd be a great way to start the vid. Psalm 13, to the chief musician, a psalm of David. How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long shall I take counsel in my soul, having sorrow in my heart daily? How long will my enemy be exalted over me? Consider and hear me, O Lord, my God. Enlighten my eyes, lest I sleep the sleep of death, lest my enemy say, I have prevailed against him, lest those who trouble me rejoice when I am moved. But I have trusted in your mercy. My heart shall rejoice in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord, because he has dealt bountifully with me. Now on to Psalm 14, and after I finish reading Psalm 14, I will read these 10 crucial archaeological discoveries related to the Bible. And as I said earlier on, there's plenty more where that came from. It's one of those things that once you start looking into it, it can become absolutely fascinating, because all of the archaeological discoveries that have been made until 2022 prove the Bible to be correct. Nothing's been found that contradicts the Bible. Nothing. All of the main characters in the Bible, Pontius Pilate, everyone, it's all been historically and archaeologically proven that they existed. Psalm 14. The fool has said in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt. They have done abominable works. There is none who does good. The Lord looks down from heaven upon the children of men to see if there are any who understand, who seek God. They have all turned aside. They have together become corrupt. There is none who does good. No, not one. Have all the workers of iniquity no knowledge, who eat up my people as they eat bread, and do not call on the Lord? For they are in great fear, for God is with the generation of the righteous. You shame the counsel of the poor, but the Lord is his refuge. Oh, that the salvation of Israel would come out of Zion, when the Lord brings back the captivity of his people. Let Jacob rejoice and Israel be glad. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. So without further ado, I'm going to read this slowly and methodically. It's got plenty of words that I will struggle to pronounce, so just bear with me. Right, so here goes. 10 crucial archaeological discoveries related to the Bible. And this is an article that was written on April 26, 2018, so it's not too old. Written by a guy called John D. Currid. That's his name. And it says here, the following article is adapted from the ESV Archaeology Study Bible, a new study tool that roots biblical text in its cultural and historical context. Wow, so let me just read that again. The following article is adapted from the ESV Archaeology Study Bible, so definitely check that out. It sounds very, very interesting. I might buy a copy myself. A new study tool that roots biblical text in its cultural and historical context. Now, number one is the Rosetta Stone. This is something that I know about, but again, I'm going to read it here. Now, it starts off like this. In 1798, Napoleon invaded Egypt. He brought with him a scientific team of scholars and draftsmen to survey the monuments of the land. The most important find of the expedition was the Rosetta Stone. It proved to be valuable as the key to deciphering ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics. The stone dated to the period of Ptolemy V, 204 to 180 BC, and was inscribed in three scripts: Demotic, Greek, and hieroglyphic. The Greek, well known to scholars at the time, proved to be a translation of the ancient Egyptian language on the stone. Translation of hieroglyphics marked the beginning of the study of ancient Egyptian texts and grammar and provided the basis for modern Egyptology studies. Right, now the second one is something that most people know about. It's the Dead Sea Scrolls. Okay, in 1947, shepherds stumbled upon a cave in a rugged, arid area on the western side of the Dead Sea. What they discovered was soon proclaimed the greatest archaeological find of the 20th century. Over the next few years, other similar remote caves in the area were found. What did these caves contain? Over 800 fragmentary documents, mainly consisting of Hebrew writings on leather, with a few on parchment, including fragments of 190 biblical scrolls. Most of these are small, containing no more than 1/10 of a book. However, a complete Isaiah scroll has been found. So let me just read that part again. However, a complete Isaiah scroll has been found. Almost every OT book is present, and there are also other writings valued by the community that dwelt in those caves. It appears the earliest scrolls date to the mid-3rd century BC and most to the 1st or 2nd centuries BC, right? So that would have been, that's before the Roman Empire reached its height of power. Perhaps the greatest contribution of this find is to our understanding of the transmission of the biblical text. It is encouraging to note that the differences are minimal between the OT text of the Dead Sea Scrolls and various editions of the Hebrew text produced 1,000 years later and used today, involving the smallest textual details. The meaning of the text itself is not affected by these differences. Okay, so now on to the third one, and it's the Tel Dan inscription. This is something that I know nothing about whatsoever. Okay, so in 1993, excavators at Tel Dan uncovered an inscription with the word BYTDWD on it. They convincingly argue that the word means House of David and dates to the 9th century BC. Wow. The inscription had been sealed by a later Assyrian destruction layer The inscription had been sealed by a later Assyrian destruction layer, firmly dated to 733/722 BC. An ash layer is an archaeologist's dream. Anything sealed beneath it must be dated earlier because there is no possibility of intrusion by later artifacts. Makes sense. Pottery directly beneath the destruction level dates to the 9th and 8th centuries BC, and from this period the so-called House of David inscription must have come. Although some scholars have attempted to explain away the inscription by asserting BYTDWD is either a place name or a designation for a temple of a deity, it probably refers to the house of lineage of David, the second king of the United Monarchy and arguably the most significant ruler in the history of Israel. Additional evidence is the likely appearance of the term BYTDWD on the Mesha Stela Moabite stone, also dating to the 9th century BC. So that's very, very interesting. Now on to the fourth crucial archaeological evidence which proves the Bible to be correct. It's called the Ketef Hinnom scrolls. In 1979, Israeli archaeologist Gabriel Barkay was excavating a burial cave at Ketef Hinnom, just southwest of Jerusalem. The tomb was a typical late Iron Age, late 7th century BC burial structure. The typical Judean burial at this time took place in a rock-cut cave. When a person died, he was placed on a burial bench in the tomb along with personal items such as vases, jewellery or trinkets. Once the body decayed, the bones of the person were placed in a box beneath the burial bench. When the team began to excavate the box, they came upon two small silver scrolls. Since the scrolls were metal, the archaeologists had a difficult time unrolling and deciphering their text. They began with the larger of the two scrolls, which took 3 years to unroll. Wow. When unrolled, it measured only 3 inches, 7.6 centimetres long. When they finished, they noticed the scroll was covered with very delicately etched characters. The first word they were able to decipher was the name Yahweh. After much work, they were able to read the entire scroll. It contained the priestly benediction from number 6. The smaller scroll also contained the benediction from number 6. It took so long to unroll and decipher the scrolls that the material was not published until 1989. That's 2 years after I was born. Whew. These two scrolls are relatively unknown, but they can be seen today in the Israel Museum in Jerusalem. They are the earliest known citations of biblical texts in Hebrew. They predate the earliest Dead Sea Scrolls by more than 400 years and are thus helpful in matters of textual criticism. Many authors have argued that the priestly benediction was written after the exile, with its earliest date from the 4th century BC. Now we have physical examples of the benediction from the late 7th century BC. In addition, the discovery of 2 plaques of the same benediction in a buried site underscores the centrality of the priestly benediction to the religion of the Israelites. Now on to the 5th piece of evidence, the Moabite stone. In 1868, a missionary in Jerusalem found a stone tablet for sale that appeared to be from ancient times. The sellers broke the tablet into a number of pieces to sell them one at a time to make more money. Fortunately, a copy of the tablet was made prior to the break. This copy is in the Louvre today. On the tablet is a text written in Moabite dating to the 9th century BC. It was perhaps a victory stone erected by King Mesha to commemorate his military achievements. The text begins, "I am Mesha, son of Chemosh, king of Moab." Prominent in the text is the king's version of a war fought with Israel in 850 BC, in which Moab revolted against King Joam of the northern kingdom of Israel soon after the death of Ahab. Of particular interest is that the Bible records the same incident in 2 Kings 3. So let me read that again. Of particular interest is that the Bible records the same incident in 2 Kings 3. All right. The two accounts differ in perspective, however. Mesha emphasizes his victories over Israel in capturing cities under Israelite control. The biblical writer, to the contrary, highlights Israel's successful counterattacks against the Moabites. Let me just read that again. Mesha emphasizes his victories over Israel in capturing cities. Okay, so it's all about Mesha's victories over Israel, capturing cities under Israelite control. The biblical writer, to the contrary, highlights Israel's successful counterattacks against the Moabites. So yeah, so that's like seeing both sides of the story there. Very interesting. Number 6, the Lachish letters. In the 1930s, J.L. Starkey excavated the site of Lachish. He discovered a layer of debris heavily destroyed and burned with fire at the hands of the Babylonians under Nebuchadnezzar in 589/588 BC. Starkey unearthed 18 ostraga in the burnt debris of a guardroom between the inner and outer gates of the city. An ostragon is an inscription written in ink on pottery shards. Most of the ostraca were correspondence, although a few were lists of names. The contents of the ostraca were fragmentary, and only a third of them are sufficiently preserved to be intelligible. The date of the ostraca is generally immediately prior to the destruction of Lachish by the Babylonians. A number of the letters are written by a man named Hoshea, I think that's how you pronounce it, Hoshea, to a military commander named Yarosh, or was that Yarosh? I think that's how you pronounce it. The common interpretation is that Hoshea was the commander of a fortress outside Lachish, writing to Yarosh, the commander of Lachish. Other commentators believe Hoshea was the military chief of Lachish and Yarosh, a high official in Jerusalem. One of the letters closes with the statement, "Let my Lord know that we are watching for the signals of Lachish, according to all the indications which my Lord hath given, for we cannot see Azekah." Hoshea was referring to signal fires from one Judean city to another, and the context appears to be the Babylonian assault soon to come. Now the Epic of Gilgamesh. This is something that I'm very familiar with because I've read the Epic of Gilgamesh many times. It's absolutely fascinating. In fact, call me biased or whatever, but I think that King Gilgamesh was in fact a Nephilim king. Whenever you see Gilgamesh depicted in artwork, he's always holding either two lions or he's tearing an ox apart. Now, many historians and archaeologists will simply say, okay, he was depicted as being larger than life because of his status. But in fact, a lot of what we see in archaeology and history, in my opinion, is actually more literal than what we give it credit for. I mean, take the giants that are depicted in the hieroglyphics inside the pyramids. We're talking about not just the kings and queens due to their social status as being taller than the ordinary folks. Of course, you would expect that. The kings and queens are often depicted as being larger than life. But you see all sorts of other people. You know, you get smaller giants, bigger giants, and then you get the smaller people. So let me just say that again. You get the small workers carrying out their tasks, okay? Then you get the smaller giants, which are many, many feet taller than the ordinary people. Then you get the huge giants, like 30 plus feet, 36 to 40 feet perhaps. Yeah, and it's all depicted inside the pyramids. Anyway, I didn't want to go too far off topic, but it's not really off topic. It's just like deviating from what I was talking about. Anyway. Epic of Gilgamesh. In 1872, George Smith announced. Oh yes, before once I start talking about the pyramids, there's a very interesting book called what am I saying? It's called the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and they talk about the builder gods. That's another clue, isn't it? The builder gods. Who are these gods who help build the pyramids? The Nephilim that are written in the Bible, who were produced by the fallen angels, perhaps? I'll leave it there. Anyway, number 7, the Epic of Gilgamesh. In 1872, George Smith announced he had discovered an Assyrian account of a flood among tablets stored in the British Museum from excavations of mid-7th century BC in Nineveh, called the Epic of Gilgamesh. I absolutely love the Epic of Gilgamesh. The story comprises of 12 tablets, with one tablet containing a tale of a great deluge. The hero of the flood, a man named Let me try and pronounce this correctly from the start. I mean, come on. It's Utnapishtim. I mean, could you pronounce it? I'm going to try my best. Upashtim. Upashtim, that's how I'm going to pronounce it, relates an episode to Gilgamesh. He explains how the god Ea warned him about an approaching judgment and told him to build a boat to save his life from the watery onslaught. As the tale unfolds, the epic, in some respects, is nearly identical to the biblical narrative of Noah in Genesis 6:9. This discovery created quite a stir among biblical scholars of the 19th century, and even today scholars continue to puzzle over and debate the obvious parallels between the two. And before I go any further, I'd just like to say something about that, because from all four quarters of the earth, we're talking about people that had no way of knowing about this story of the biblical flood unless it actually happened for real. We're talking about from all four, we're talking about, like literally from all four quarters of the earth, people that had no way of being able to pass the story on because of the sheer distance involved. We're talking about thousands of miles here, right? They knew about the biblical flood. Now, of course, not all these stories and accounts of Noah's flood are going to be as accurate as the Bible's, because the Bible is the proper version. Yeah, but it all stems from the same source, and it's not because it's imaginary and all these people decided to think of a story of a great worldwide flood. It's because it happened. So many people say, it's impossible, Noah's flood didn't happen. How could you fit all the dinosaurs on there? Dinosaur eggs are not fully grown dinosaurs. A sauropod or a brachiosaurus fully grown would not fit onto the ark, as huge as it was. Okay, you would have to get not fully grown dinosaurs, and don't forget that most dinosaurs were, the average size of a dinosaur was about the size of a sheep, thereabouts, and then there's dinosaur eggs as well. So when people don't want to believe something, they will come up with all different reasons as to how it didn't happen. Remember, the dinosaurs were not fully grown. The huge, long-necked, long-tailed dinosaurs like sauropods were not fully grown. There were baby ones, and there's a lot of dinosaur eggs and smaller dinosaurs, along with all the other animals, of course, the lions, the tigers, the wolves, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So it's all about worldview at the end of the day. People will only believe what they want to believe. It doesn't matter what evidence you show them. This video that I'm doing right now isn't for people that refuse to believe what's written in the Bible, no matter what. It's for people that are open-minded, broad-minded, perhaps they've got an intellectual interest in this kind of stuff, perhaps they're already Christians, or people that are undecided and they don't know what to believe. Anyway, without further ado, number 8, Hezekiah's Tunnel. The most dependable water source for the city of Jerusalem during the Israelite settlement was the Gihon Spring. However, its location outside the city walls was problematic. During an attack or siege, the inhabitants were cut off from their vital water source. In 1867, explorer Charles Warren discovered a vertical shaft cut through bedrock, allowing the people of Jerusalem to reach the waters of the Gihon Spring from behind the city walls. This shaft was probably built originally by the Jebusites, and maybe how David's soldiers captured the city from them. 2 Sam 5:6-8. In the Bible that's referring to. A new water system employing part of the earlier one was built by Hezekiah near the end of the 8th century BC due to an Assyrian military threat. Hezekiah's tunnel sloped gently away from the Gihon Spring to allow water to flow from it to the pool of Siloam inside the city walls. Hezekiah's tunnel was cut by two teams digging toward each other from opposite ends. It was not chiseled in a straight line, but was serpentine due to frequent shifts in terrain. The two teams made adjustments as they drew near each other and heard the picks of the other team. An inscription 20 feet 6 meters from the Siloam pool has been discovered that describes the meeting of the two cutting teams. Very, very interesting. Now, number 9, crucified man at Givat Hamivitah. It's very difficult to pronounce. Hamivtar, Jivat. Hamvitar, I think you pronounce it Hamvitar. We are well aware of the Roman methods of crucifixion of the 1st century after Christ, not only from written records but also from the remains of a crucified man discovered at Jivat Hamvitar, a site just outside Jerusalem. The cross consisted of 2 parts: the upright bar, called the Stipes Crucis, and the horizontal bar, called the patibulum. So that's patibulum, I think, or patulum. Perhaps you pronounce it patulum. Anyway, the crucified man was placed with his back over the Stipes Crucis, and his hands were nailed to the patulum. According to archaeologists, the nails must have been driven through the wrist because the palms could not have supported the man's weight. Makes a lot of sense. He was affixed to the cross also by his feet in a way different from what is commonly thought. The Roman executioner made a crude rectangular frame of wood in which the heels of the victim were pressed. Then an iron nail was driven through the right part of the frame. Through the man's calcani, I think this must be Latin, calcani, the largest tarsal bones in the foot, and then through the left part of the frame. The free end of the nail was then bent by hammer blows. This find gives archaeologists further insight into Roman crucifixions, and of course it backs up what's written in the Bible. Right, so the last piece of evidence of this particular article, like I said earlier on at the start of this video, there are many pieces of archaeological evidence, hundreds, I'm guessing thousands. I've never looked into the numbers involved, but there must be a huge amount. Anyway, the Ugaritic text, that's spelled Ugaritic. Ugaritic text, I think that's how you must pronounce it. A great majority of Canaanite texts come from the site of Ugarit, modern-day Ras Shamra, on the northern coast of Syria along the Mediterranean Sea. Ugarit was a prominent Canaanite city-state of the 2nd millennium BC. Major excavations have taken place at the site since 1929. A most important find at Ugarit are hundreds of texts discovered in the palace and temple areas. More than 1,500 of those tablets have been published. Ugarit reached its height in the 15th to 13th centuries BC, the period in which written literature at the site flourished. The city met its final fate at the hands of Mediterranean enemies who destroyed the site around 1200 BC. The importance of the Ugaritic texts is the material they provide concerning a Canaanite religion. Their mythic texts help us understand the religious context of the OT, including many parallels between Canaanite and Israelite religious practices. In addition, the languages of Ugaritic and Hebrew are quite similar, and thus Ugaritic provides insight into development and grammar of Hebrew. Okay, so there's an article about John D. Currid, the guy who wrote this small article. John D. Currid, PhD, University of Chicago, is a Carl W. McMurray Professor of the Old Testament at Reformed Theological Seminary. He is currently an adjunct faculty member at the Jerusalem Center for Biblical Studies in Jerusalem, Israel, and serves as project director of the Bethsaida Excavations Project in Israel, 1995 to present. He lectures and preaches worldwide, so this man knows what he's talking about. Of course, a lot of this is open to interpretation, but But yes, you'll find that any archaeologist worth their salt will state time and time again that nothing archaeologically that's been found throughout the whole world. It disproves the Bible. It all proves it to be absolutely correct. Now, I may leave one or two links down below. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope it hasn't been too long, but I had to read out those articles and add a little bit of my own input here and there as well. So that's where all the time went. So I hope you enjoyed it. Remember to like, subscribe, and comment down below. Thank you so much for tuning in. See you on the next one. Bye and take care. Oh yeah, and I'd very much like to hear from anyone down below who wants to leave comments, perhaps people that want to leave links relating to what I've been talking about, or perhaps things that they know of archaeologically and historically speaking that proves the Bible to be correct as well. I'd love to hear from anyone. All right, see you on the next one. Bye and take care.